محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So in the few minutes that I have, I just want to remind myself and all of you that although Rabiul Awwal is over now and we are now in the month of Rabiul Thani, this does not mean that we stop studying the Seerah, the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because what we tend to do is in Rabiul Awwal we will commemorate the birth of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam by listening to talks about his life. And now that we are in the month of Rabiul Thani, we tend to just move on to the life of Shaykh Al-Jilani rahimahullah, the greatest of saints who passed away in this month. But it's important that throughout the entire year we are constantly studying Seerah, and we have to remember that our Messenger ﷺ is an example for us, a role model for us for every moment of our lives, not just in the month of Rabiul Awwal. And sometimes some scholars, they unfortunately create this feeling in people's minds that, okay, you've celebrated the Prophet's birthday, you followed one or two of his sunnahs, that's enough to you to get into Jannah, you've proved his love. But actually, we have to remember that that was all mustahab. And the definition of mustahab, of something which is optional, is that if you do it, you get reward, and la yu'aqabu tarikuhu, that the person who does not do the mawlid, they are not punished, because mustahab is something optional. But the prayer is fard. There are many other things which are fard, there are many other things which are important, and if we are not doing those, then we cannot deceive ourselves into thinking that I've celebrated a few holy days and therefore I am guaranteed Jannah. No. The scholars, they said, لو كان حبك حقا لأطعته إن المحب لمن يحب مطيع. The ulama, they said that if you truly love the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you would follow him and obey him every moment of your life, because this is what a lover does for his beloved. And for example, we have the story of a young Sahabi called Rabi'a. Rabi'a, he says that he used to serve the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and one night he was giving him water for tahajjud. So if Rabi'a is giving water for tahajjud to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then obviously he's going to be praying tahajjud himself. So he's exerting himself in praying the 5 salahs and doing tahajjud as well. So the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to Rabi'a, ask me for whatever you want. So Rabi'a thought about it carefully, and he said that initially I thought to ask for something materialistic, because he was not very well off. But then he thought to himself that the best thing I can ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for is Jannah, because that's eternal. So he says, Rabi'a said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, As'aluka murafaqataka fil Jannah. Ya Rasulullah, I ask you to pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes me your companion in Jannah. That's such a beautiful thing to ask for. He didn't ask only for Jannah, but he asked for the companionship of Rasulullah in Jannah. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, look what he said, very interesting. He did not say to Rabi'a that because you are serving me, that you are guaranteed Jannah. He said to him, فَأَعِنِّي عَلَى نَفْسِكَ بِكَثْرَةِ السُّجُودِ. He said to Rabi'a, if you want my companionship in Jannah, help me to help you in that regard by increasing your sujood. Now who is he saying this to? He's saying this to somebody who even prays tahajjud. So if we want the companionship of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and we claim to love him and we want to be with him, it doesn't come easily just by celebrating a few holy days or following a few sunnahs. We have to really exert ourselves. In fact, Imam An-Nawawi, in this hadith of Rabi'a, he puts it in Babul Mujahada, the chapter of exerting oneself. So if we want anything in this world, you want to get good results in your exams, you want to get a good job, you have to go through a lot of striving and struggling and make a lot of sacrifice. And so the same thing with the Akhirah. And so the importance of studying the Seerah, our Shaykh, when we first started our studies in the Alim course, the first day what he said to us was that the Seerah, studying the Seerah is more important than studying tafsir or hadith or fiqh or anything else. And he said the reason for that is because the accuracy and the authority of all those other Islamic sciences depends on the Seerah, because there are so many attacks on the life of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if the enemies of Islam, if they were able to prove from the Seerah that astaghfirullah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on just one occasion, in his life, that he was not truthful, for example, that would put the accuracy and authority of the tafsir, the Quran itself, the hadith and fiqh, all of that into jeopardy. So as Muslims, every one of us nowadays, with all the Islamophobia that we see around us, each one of us needs to be half an alim. Each one of us needs to be studying so that we can defend Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the various accusations against him in the seerah. For example, one of the most common ones is that after the Battle of the Trench, the Banu Qurayza, who were a Jewish tribe, when they betrayed him, and their betrayal almost led to the slaughter of all the innocent Muslims, when they surrendered, one of the common misconceptions is that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he had 600 of their soldiers, their men slaughtered. Now Ibn Ishaq, the earliest biographer of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions this figure of 600, but he does not give any reference for it, any evidence. Now, the scholars who have looked into this, studied the seerah in detail, they have said that, recently a scholar from Saudi Arabia, Dr. Abdullah Al-Qadi, he said that the seerah mentions that the prisoners of war, the soldiers of the Banu Qurayza, they were put in a particular house of Ayman. And he said that I know the houses of Medina inside out. And in that house, you would not be able to fit more than 10 men. So when we study these things, then our misconceptions are removed and we're able to answer the non-Muslim objections towards the seerah. And there are also many beautiful things that we discover. So for example, we know that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was aged 12 and 25, that he went to Sham. And the word Sham consists of the countries of Palestine, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and eastern Egypt. All the areas is called Sham. But recently, after studying the seerah in detail, the Jordanian king and Prince Ghazi, they've actually found the tree, the blessed tree. And you can go online, you can see this documentary, The Blessed Tree, where Prince Ghazi and his team actually, by studying the seerah, they found the route which the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam took from Mecca with Abu Talib all the way to Asham in Jordan. And they discovered the tree under which he sat sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he met Bahira when he was 12 years old, and then Nestor, the other Christian priest, when he was 25 years old. And so the son of Imam al-Hussein, Ali Zain al-Abidin, he says that كُنَّا نُعَلَّمْ مَغَازِي رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ كَمَا نُعَلَّمْ السُّورَةَ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ. The son of Imam Hussein, Ali Zain al-Abidin, he says that we used to be taught the seerah in the same way that we were taught a surah from the Quran. So the same way that us as parents, when we teach our children the Fatiha and Surah Al-Ikhlas, Surah Al-Falaq, Surah Al-Nas, in the same way the previous the generations, the companions, the Tabi'in, the Taba Tabi'in, they would put as much emphasis in teaching their children the seerah as well. Because the seerah, by studying the seerah, you become in love with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You love him sallallahu alaihi wasallam by knowing his seerah. You know how to follow him. You know what's lawful, you know what's unlawful by following him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you're able to defend him as well. And the seerah is one of the ways to spiritually connect with him. So, for example, one of the scholars of Egypt, the former Grand Mufti, he said that he read 40 books of seerah, and after that he was blessed with a vision of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, as parents, we need to first study the seerah, and every book of seerah has its advantages, it has its disadvantages, and there will always be mistakes in every book. So it's important that every single Muslim household, and this is something for everyone to do when you go home today, every single Muslim household should have a shelf of books of the seerah. And there are so many, there are many books now in Arabic, in Urdu, in English, and it's also important for us to read the works of non-Muslims as well, so that we can quote from them and tell our children that, for example, Michael Hart, the American scholar, although he was a Christian and he wrote this book called The 100, a ranking of the most influential people in history, despite being a Christian, he put Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as number one. And so it's also nice for us to read their works as well. And then you have Dr. Craig Considine, who's written a beautiful book on the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And although he's a Christian, he's refuted completely all those accusations on the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, astaghfirullah, being a terrorist and so forth. And then you have Dr. Jean Paul, another book which is written in the last few years. Muhammad, he was a figure of peace amidst a clash of empires. So his entire book is about the fact that the Romans and Persians were bloodthirsty, and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, contrary to what we are told, he was the man of peace of his time. And then you have two books on the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life by Karen Armstrong. Dr. Karen Armstrong wrote two biographies on the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I remember about 2 decades ago, when someone first came across them, they said that when I read her books, I feel as though I am reading a book by a great Muslim scholar. because although she's not Muslim, it shows how much love she has for the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and how much she has for him in terms of admiration. And in terms of our life as well, every aspect of our life, we can follow the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So if someone is an orphan, you read the Seerah, you feel better. The Seerah is a shifa for you. So one of the most famous books of Seerah is actually called Ash-Shifa by Qadi Iyad. And it was the tradition of the Muslims to read this. This book used to be in every household. Every household used to have the book of Ash-Shifa by Qadi Iyad, his Seerah, in their house, and they used to read it. And the reason why he named it Ash-Shifa is because he said that if somebody is physically or mentally or spiritually unwell, if they read my book, which is all about the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his unique qualities, Allah will give them shifa. And so when we read these books, we find that if you are depressed, you're feeling down because you're an orphan, you read the life of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you find that he was an orphan, he lost both his parents by the age of 6, that it helps you to feel better. If you were poor, you'll find the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam went through immense poverty in his life until he met Sayyidah Khadija radhiyallahu anha. If you've been boycotted by your family, you can look to the Seerah and see how he Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam he was boycotted for 3 years, to the extent that they were living in the desert and eating grass and these kind of things. If you have gone through any difficulty, if you yourself or someone in your family is falsely accused, you can look at the life of the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and in the Seerah you find, well, his noble wife, the purest of women, Sayyidah Aisha, she was falsely accused of something, and he had to go through that tribulation for a long time. So I can take some consolation from that as well. In every aspect of his life, we find that he is the best role model. In fact, one scholar, he wrote recently a book on economics, and he said that the first financial ombudsman in history was arguably Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So every aspect of our lives, no matter what field we are in, what our profession is, we find something interesting in the Seerah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And in terms of the spiritual link with him, that Seerah is one of the best ways to connect with him spiritually. Shaykh Sha'rawi, rahmatullah alayhi, Muhammad Mutawalli Sha'rawi, probably the most famous scholar from Egypt in the last century, the most loved by various sects. He says that he was very famous for giving duruus on tafsir. So once he was giving a dars on the tafsir of Surah Al-Ahzab, the Battle of the Trench. And then the next day he actually said to his audience that I said something yesterday and I want to correct it. Because when he was talking about the Battle of the Trench and the related verses of the Quran, he actually saw Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he actually saw Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala showed him the Battle of the Trench in the time of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and so he corrected the mistake that he had made the previous day. And so the point is that if we really read Seerah books with love, Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala can connect you to Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And Allah can give you knowledge which is not even found in the Seerah. So Shaykh Sha'rawi, he tells another interesting story. He says that he once went to a conference, and there was a scholar there who was clearly behaving very arrogantly. He was trying to show the rest of the scholars that he is more knowledgeable than them. And so Shaykh Sha'rawi, to put him in his place, he went up to him and said to him, I have a question for you. That when the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he passed away, what happened to the water, the ma'ul ghusl, the water that his blessed body was washed with? And as we know from the Seerah, if you read Qadi Iyad's Ash-Shifa, you know his basic knowledge that everything from the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, everything about him, his noble sweat, and the drops from his wudu, everything was pure. Even the water from wudu, the Sahaba would not let it drop on the ground. They would catch it and they would wipe it on their bodies for blessings, for barakah. So this scholar, he could not answer this question, because if you open any book of Seerah, it doesn't mention anything about where the blessed water of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the ghusl, went. So the scholar, he said to Shaykh Sha'rawi, I will try and research this and answer you tomorrow. So that evening he spent all his time going through every Seerah book, trying to find the answer. And then he just dozed off whilst he was doing his research. He couldn't find the answer anywhere. And then he saw a beautiful dream in which the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came in his dream, because he did salawat. When he gave up in finding the answer, he started doing salawat upon the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And salawat, the Durood Sharif, is one of the best ways to see him in your dream. So he saw a dream in which the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was walking, and with him was somebody who was holding a lamp. And the man, he asked Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam a question, that when your blessed body was washed, when you passed away, what happened to that water? And Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, ask the man carrying the lamp. And the man carrying the lamp said that this water, Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, He caused it to evaporate, He caused it to be a rain of mercy, And wherever that rain of mercy, wherever it then landed when it rained, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destined for a masjid to be built there. Either since that time or in the future. So this man, he got very excited. The next day he went to the conference and called Shaykh Sharawi and said, I have the answer to your question. And he gave him the answer, but he said Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told me the answer. The Shaykh Sharawi said to him, who told you the answer of this question? Was it Rasulullah or was it the man holding the lamp? And the scholar, he was shocked. He said, I never told you that there was a man carrying a lamp in the dream. How did you know that? And Shaykh Sharawi said, I was the man. I was the one carrying the lamp in your dream. So we connect to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with via the Seerah. And this is a command from him when he said to us sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Addibu awladakum ala thalathi khisal." Teach your children three things: hubba nabiyikum, the love of your Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wa hubba ahli baytihi, and the love of his family. And we get that through studying his life. And also, as I mentioned at the beginning, there are many things that we can learn from the Seerah and implement in our lives. So for example, in Rabiul Awwal, which we've just passed through, we will find in every Seerah book that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he arrived into Medina on the 12th of Rabiul Awwal, which was his birthday. Every Seerah book will mention that he did the Hijrah, and then it was an interesting journey. He built Masjid Quba, and then he went to Medina and he built the Masjid al-Nabawi. But a lot of the Seerah books don't mention important points. This is why it's important to study. The fact that not only did he build Masjid al-Nabawi, but at the same time he also built a marketplace for the Muslims as well. Because he saw that the Jewish tribes are controlling the economics, the finances in Medina, because they have the marketplace. So he said we should be financially independent, we should have our own marketplace. And so when we learn this, we realize that it's not important just to build masajid, it's important for Muslims in the same way that they are focusing on their spirituality, that we learn from the Seerah that we should also be financially strong and independent as well. So there are many lessons we can learn from the Seerah, so I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps us to study the Seerah inshallah throughout the entire year, not just in Rabiul Awwal. May He increase our love and connection to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam through it, and may He help us to implement every aspect of the Seerah so that we are successful in this dunya and in the akhirah as well, inshallah.